Hello, welcome to Government Connection. My name is Vicki Evans. West Nile virus arrived in the United States around 1999 and it settled in Arizona in 2003. Experts say it's here to stay. Well, we're going to learn the real facts about West Nile virus and how it affects us and our lifestyle as we welcome Patty Woodcock. And Patty is the Community Relations Manager with the Pima County Health Department. And we also welcome Lisa Hulett. And Lisa is the Program Manager Epidemiology for Epidemiology. And Patty, let's begin. I mentioned that I don't even know. You know, we all talk about West Nile as citizens a lot, especially this time of the year, but I don't really know that much about it. Can you describe, maybe either Patty or Lisa, what it is and who's that mosquito critter that brings it to us?
Well, it's a lovely little thing because it's a female that does the biting, and she's the one that's can transmit West Nile virus to us. But it's a bird disease, and the mosquito bites the bird, and then the mosquito bites us. But Lisa can give you more information on that.
I think we have, and I'd like just to show people, I think we have a graphic that shows the transmission of West Nile from the bird to the mosquito. And we've got that one too. There we go.
There it goes.
So tell us about this, Lisa.
As Patty said, it is pretty much a bird disease. Birds and mosquitoes are the natural cycle, the reservoir and the host for this disease. Any mammal can become infected with West Nile virus. Horses are particularly prone to it when they develop the disease, become very sick, but dogs, cats, birds are the main one, but other kinds of animals that could be like llamas, alpacas we've had in Arizona, foxes. So any kind of mammals can also develop the disease, but we're all dead-end hosts is what we call us. We're incidental hosts or dead ends. So if your dog were to develop West Nile virus, your dog could not give it to another dog, could not give it to you, could not give it to any other family member. There's just no way for that transmission to happen. For any mammal to develop it, it's required that sort of mosquito transmission. There's a very few kinds of situations, such as blood transfusions and organ transplants, where there had been documented transmission. We're very careful about that in the U.S. now, and all blood products are screened for West Nile virus starting, I think it was in 2004. So that's not too big a problem, but it pretty much is, that cycle is the transmission that keeps it going is between the bird and the mosquito.
Is it every mosquito? Because I do know there are different species of mosquito. I don't know how many, I just, some seem bigger to me. I just call them big ones and little ones, but...
Well, Patty and I have learned there's stripy-legged ones too. So there are, I don't know how many species of mosquitoes. There are a few that are real prevalent in southeastern Arizona that are good, what's called a vector for the West Nile virus. We have 2 or 3 different species that we routinely find are infected with the West Nile virus and are able to then transmit the disease to birds, horses, us, whatever. Then we have what we call our floodwater mosquitoes that come out after the rains, the little ones that fly around and bite you in the ankles. Typically they're not going to give you West Nile virus. They're not able to do that. And there are some other mosquitoes in the Tucson area that are not necessarily good vectors. We don't worry about them so much. They're a nuisance. They certainly can transmit disease, but they're not the main West Nile virus transmitters.
Did this disease, is it a homegrown disease? Is this virus homegrown, or did it come from across the big pond, as they say?
The Nile River.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's
the ergo.
Ergo the name, yes.
Where it was first identified.
Yes.
Probably in the late 1930s was when it was very first identified or named or described. But it didn't have any relationship to North America or South America until just in the past decade.
Let's talk about symptoms. What are the symptoms if you do get infected? Is that the proper word? If you get bitten and you're feeling poorly?
Well, most people probably won't even come down with the disease and won't even know that they have it. Right?
And you mean most, like really most?
A large percentage of people who get bitten by mosquitoes won't develop West Nile virus. Some will develop some flu-like symptoms where you kind of ache all over, or you just feel kind of yucky, run a low-grade fever, body aches, things like that. And then there are some who develop neurological problems, encephalitis and meningitis, that can be devastating, that can cause long-lasting illness and long-term recovery issues.
So when you're talking about encephalitis, and does that mean in the spinal cord into the brain? Is that what we're talking about?
Right.
That kind of,
Right.
of damage?
Yes.
You just described that a lot of these symptoms are flu-like. How can we tell the difference, and when do we know when to go to the doctor?
Go ahead.
I think one of the main things is that we don't typically have flu in the summertime. So the season and time of year is a real, that's sort of a telling thing. It's not typical to feel like you have the flu in August. We just don't see that. If you have those kind of symptoms and know you've had mosquito bites in the past 10 days, that's another good clue, or thinking maybe I've had a mosquito exposure and I'm feeling sick. And then some of the other things, there are some not quite as common symptoms that some folks have that go along with the flu-like symptoms, like rash, maybe some eye pain and things like that you don't necessarily have with every case of the flu. So there's a little bit of extra symptoms and you just don't quite feel right, and those are the main ones.
All right. And flu-like symptoms is probably one of the dumbest questions I've ever asked, but I always think of the flu as a cold, and it isn't that kind of thing, is it? I mean, it's achy and you...
It's a big, it's really...
Temp the whole bit?
Serious body aches, fatigue, fever is almost always associated. But it's a respiratory illness, and West Nile virus is. And we've had cases in the past couple of years where people had symptoms, GI kinds of symptoms, upset stomach kinds of things. So it really runs the gamut in terms of symptoms.
Yeah. And flu can do that, I mean, yeah.
It can.
That.
We know that it's fairly new in North America and South America. So with 10 years of experience, we're still looking at what that clinical presentation is. And we're learning a little bit more every year. We were originally thinking that those really mild cases would get better in a few days. Well, now we're finding some people take weeks and weeks to recover fully, to get their energy back and to not feel like they're down and kind of under the weather for a really long time, even with those milder cases that we call West Nile fever.
Right. So when do you go to the doctor? And can he test? Can my doctor, he or she, test for West Nile?
I think the best thing to do is, if you have felt really awful for a long time, a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, go to the doctor. You should do that anyway. And yes, they can test. Yes, there is a blood test that they can draw to look for the titers in your bloodstream. So it's anyone who feels just not themselves for, like I said, for a week to 10 days, go to your physician. Go and see your primary care provider and tell them, I've had a few mosquito bites, I'm not feeling well. I think I'd like you to run a West Nile virus test on me.
All right. And then how about once I have the virus? Has my body built up some immune mechanisms, and would I get it again if I...
You will not get it again. It's a virus that will stay with you. So you will not be vulnerable to that particular mosquito-borne illness, which isn't to say that you're free and clear in terms of mosquito-borne illnesses. As we all know, there are other ones. Malaria is a huge problem, but there are others that we actually might have a little bit more likelihood of encountering in this part of the world. So you will not develop, you won't get West Nile virus again, but you're still vulnerable to other mosquito-borne illnesses.
And part of that, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but part of that, it's really important that people use those common sense measures when they go outside. Mosquitoes usually feed dusk to dawn, when the temperatures have cooled off, in our beautiful evenings and our great mornings when it's cool and we're still under 80 degrees, 90 degrees in the morning, and later in the evenings. People still need to put on their repellents. They still need
Even if I've been infected too?
Yeah. Well, sure, because there are other mosquito-borne illnesses that you could potentially contract by being bitten by that mosquito. And so why put yourself in that position of being exposed? Plus two, why would you want to be bitten again? It's a nuisance, it's annoying, it itches. It's not a pleasant experience. So use your repellents. Put a can of wipes by the door, or a spray can by the door, at the front door and the back door. Stick one in the glove compartment of the car. Put one in the diaper bag for the kids, in your backpack. and use it. Use it when you go out.
And there's a number of repellent products out there now, so there's a wide variety to choose from, and we really, really recommend people do that.
And the DEET, why is that so? We just showed the audience, use a repellent with DEET, and that's safe for infants, for children, for everyone, or not?
There are different concentrations. There are products that are available that are safe for young children. I don't know about young newborn type infants, but there are lower concentrations that can be used. Parents should talk to their pediatricians to find out what's the appropriate one that their pediatrician believes they should be using. But there are two other products that the FDA and the Centers for Disease Control are considered as active mosquito repellents. One is a product called picaridin, and another one is an active ingredient of the oil of lemon eucalyptus tree. It's not just any eucalyptus tree, and it's not, if you had one of those trees, you could just go wipe the leaves on you. There's a specific active ingredient of that particular one. They all have different periods of time that they're effective, so some last for 2 hours, some for 5 or 4, 6, 7, whatever. So you need to pay attention to the ingredients.
I was just thinking CSI for West Nile, right?
Oh,
Discovering that, what a great, that makes science so much fun,
Right.
One of the things that I've been trying to get people to think about and for the past couple of years is that we don't like flies. We don't like flies in our houses. We think, oh, they're gross. Oh, that's a disease-carrying insect, and we will not have them around our houses. And we think of mosquitoes as a nuisance bug, and they cause a bite and it itches, and we don't like mosquitoes. My goal is to have people have that same yuck factor with the mosquito as they do with having the fly in the house. It's disease. It has diseases as well.
Right. And they're harder to kind of do this to, I think. At least,
I agree.
They don't do the fly swatter, the SWAT factors. Right? I always thought it was my own coordination.
Exactly.
Yeah, but a very good point. Very good point, Lisa. There is something that perhaps the health department, that's what I would like to ask about, administers, or it's the West Nile Response Plan. Can you tell us about that?
Well, we had an incident. Last year we had 46 cases, and we had 3 people die from West Nile virus.
Here in our county?
Here in Pima County. And so we gathered together our experts, Lisa and her staff, our epidemiologists. We gathered together representatives from disease control from all the jurisdictions, and we sat down and we looked at what do we need to do to effectively respond to West Nile virus, and developed a plan. And what this plan says is initially we're going to educate, and that's what Government Connection is doing, is helping us educate the population, our friends, our neighbors, and each other on what we can do, number 1, to protect ourselves from West Nile virus, and number 2, to help our neighbors take care of the problems in their yards so that the mosquitoes in Lisa's yard don't come into my yard and come into your yard. Right. And so we developed a plan that addresses those kinds of issues and slowly ramps up the response from education and trapping and surveillance to increased monitoring to active disease surveillance to ultimate pesticide application where we put larvicide into standing water in the washes and things like that.
Right. So it's
it's an operating manual that gives us kind of outlines how we're going to approach this situation.
Right. And we've got a caller.
Oh, terrific.
Okay. So, Bill, I believe, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah. I had a question. It may or may not be significant. Has there been any research done into possibly introducing dragonflies into some of the areas, say around Reed Park and some of the lakes, like Lakeside and different areas where, because I know the dragonflies, they feed excessively on mosquitoes. So, and I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Thank you, Bill.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for that question, Bill. That's actually an interesting one. Dragonflies specifically, no. We do know that lots of people who own ponds or have ponds on their property are using mosquito fish to help bring down the mosquito populations. Then we also know that bats are huge mosquito feeders. But being from the health department and knowing about bats and rabies, I'm not encouraging people to set up bat houses on their property right now. But there are natural kinds of mosquito eaters out there. I hadn't thought about dragonflies, and I actually will talk to our entomologist friends who advise us routinely and find out the answer to that. It's a good question.
It
That is a very good
It's a
question.
very good question.
So we are talking with Patty Woodcock and Lisa Hewlett from the Pima County Health Department. If you'd like to learn more about West Nile virus, we've got some contact information. If you have any questions, West Nile Virus Public Health Center. And you are located, new place?
Yes.
3950 South Country Club Road. Phone call 243-7999. Once again, the phone number 243-7999. And please check out the website, pimahealth.org, because all the information, a lot of it we're speaking about tonight is on the website. So this response plan, then, it just covers so many different ramifications of getting or preventing mosquitoes from hanging out.
Well, true.
Basically, right?
Yes. And it also addresses what jurisdictions need to do to look at, because you have to cover the whole spectrum. That's from, eliminating breeding sites, coupling that with larvicide application, and then ultimately, if it leads to that, what you call fogging or adulticiding or spraying, those kinds of things.
How are you guys dealing with the neighbor? Let's say my yard is great and I don't have water collecting kinds of things there. I'm very careful. My neighbor isn't. How is that being handled?
There's a project being, it's actually in effect, I believe, in central Tucson right now, that's looking at neighborhood activism around mosquitoes, where neighbors are working with neighbors and trying to educate each other. And so that would be one way, is just to be sure, almost like a neighborhood watch, only a neighborhood mosquito watch kind of thing. So bringing your neighbors on board and helping them to understand what those issues are and what some of those problems might be would be the best friendly, neighborly way to do that.
Exactly.
If there are areas, for example, instead of your neighbor just not understanding it, but actually your neighbor's gone for the summer and there's a problem, you could call us and we would try and investigate and see if we can contact that property owner and have some kind of alleviation, see what we can do about it at that point.
Okay. And we just want to just interrupt just for a second. There is actually, I'm not sure if it's you, Patty, or Lisa, but at Ward 3, Councilwoman Karen Ulick's office is going to be a West Nile virus town hall on June 10th, which is a Sunday.
Right.
And Ward 3, the offices are located at 1510 East Grant Road, and it begins at 2 p.m. And you'll be talking to citizens there, right?
Yes, and it's open to the public. We invite everyone to come, and you don't need to live in Ward 3 in order to attend the meeting. It's open to everyone, and there'll be representatives there from the University of Arizona, from the City of Tucson, from the Health Department, and the idea is to, again, do that outreach and education to community members to answer those kinds of questions on what to do in your yard and how you can help your neighbor and what you need to look for, things like that. But to also answer questions on how the disease is spread, what the symptoms are, what you need to do, things like that.
Right,
so it's a good opportunity for everyone to come in and get those kinds of questions answered.
It is, definitely. And then we also want to remind you that in 2 weeks, which is June 20th, we will be talking with people from the Tucson Historic Preservation Office who've had a great big input, and they're into the development of the Convento Center, over on the new Rio Nuevo land, and the Tucson Origins Heritage Park. So learn about conserving our history, and it's special. I love that stuff. It's very interesting to know where
it really
the
is.
wonderful human habitation of this valley that we call home now.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you something. When you were talking about ponds and abatement and where these mosquitoes like to gather and kind of getting rid of the source or their environment, I lived in that hot zone that was the last one last year, and we always wondered, was there a cause for that, or was it? We couldn't see that we lived anywhere close to a lake, unless it's a hidden lake, and then please tell us.
We think we kind of have an idea, and it has to do with the heavy monsoon season we had last year. There was a series of particularly heavy storms right at the end of July and 1st of August. The Rieta River overflowed its banks in a couple of areas, causing some depressions and dips and standing water in areas that were not private property and not necessarily public property that the city was watching or the county was watching, it was places where there's not normally water. Birds like that. They go there. They hang out where it's a little bit cooler. Mosquitoes found the birds, and it just it just ended up being more into this sort of east central Tucson area. And that's our theory, and it kind of makes sense.
It does.
You know, so that's probably what it was. We had West Nile virus indicators, is what we call them, whether it be positive mosquito pools or calls about sick horses or human cases all over Pima County. It wasn't just in that area. It's just that that was a specific area where we had a little bit more than the rest of them. It was everywhere. So,
right. And we do a lot of, I mean, that area does a lot of those washes in that residence.
Yeah.
Feed
and
into the Rito and the, I mean,
Right.
we're just, which is great. I mean, it's fun to live along those, but.
That, and I think that's what it was.
Right. I want to reiterate too and just talk about, this is, West Nile virus actually is more harmful or affects more, that's what I should say, more mammals basically, non-humans, correct? Dogs, horses.
They're
Don't
infected.
do that.
They don't
Vicki, huh?
normally, no, they don't normally get sick. But they do. Most of our domestic pets probably are infected as frequently as we are. They don't normally get sick. Some of the larger mammals seem to be particularly prone to this infection. The only vaccine that's available for West Nile virus that's available is for horses. Horses, you know, it only takes one mosquito bite. So you think about this big giant horse, and it's just one little bite, but it can kill that horse. It's pretty amazing to think about that. Some of the others, as I mentioned earlier, the alpacas and llamas, and we've had some large animals in zoos around the country that have been, you know, affected by it. But the domestic animals, no, they just don't seem to get it. Right. And then one of the sad things is some of the more you know, special desert birds like roadrunners and the big owls and hawks that we have so plentifully have been, we've had those all over Arizona in the past, That's sad.
It is sad.
It is.
But will those populations rebound? Or is there, you know, would they build an immunity also? I mean, is it, or, you know, would those lovely bird populations rebound, or you just don't know yet, the evidence
We
isn't
don't
in?
know. There's been a recent research project in the eastern part of the U.S. that looked at some specific bird species that we don't have here. And I've never lived on the east, so I don't remember the names of them right now. Where they actually documented very serious declines in those bird populations. Some of them came back quickly after a couple of years. Others are still maybe a decrease. But I think when they're looking at bird numbers, there's a lot more to look at than just infections. I mean, the weather, you know, how much snow, or, you know, hurricanes, other bird diseases. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But the bottom line is, for specifically looking at what the West Nile virus did, it did cause some pretty serious declines in some species for at least a period of years. But we don't know if they'll totally come back. In terms of developing immunity, no.
That was my next question.
No. The next generation would be as vulnerable or as at risk as the previous one. Birds, you know, some birds live a really, really long time. And if a bird, just as a human, if that bird were to become infected and not develop illness, will continue to have that virus and have antibodies, will not get infected again, and maybe the second time get sick. That won't happen. But the next generation and the next generation, the hatchlings, won't have built-in immunity from the parents.
Do you know what I'd like to do before we, once more, is just put up the prevention suggestions before we close this evening. And we can go over it, and these are some of the best ways to prevent West Nile. I'll just kind of paraphrase, is to be sure you're not harboring mosquito breeding sites, and that's basically eliminate standing water. I read once they can breed, what is it, a thimbleful or less?
It's not much.
It doesn't take much.
A pop cap full or something. I mean,
it is not much.
They don't need the whole swimming pool. They just need a few drops.
That's correct.
And then use repellent. And just keep that water away from things. Keep the water away from toys, tires. We had tires for quite a few years, and that was a great breeding ground. It took us a while to figure that one out, you know. But even to use tires, long sleeves, wear long sleeves and pants, which is, I find that so hard to do. Repair leaky faucets and sprinklers.
Right.
Even that, moving water, because it settles, I suppose, once it hits, right?
Well, and we haven't had a lot of rain recently, so people are out watering because it's been warm and it's been very dry and very windy lately. And so people are out watering. So when the sprinkler goes on, even in those little places that you really don't think about, the bird bath that you haven't filled recently in it, but it fills enough with the sprinkler system or toys or whatever in the backyard, just turn those things over and keep them empty. The bottoms of saucers in your plants on the patio.
Right.
Those are good places to look.
Right.
A good solution for those are to use little pot feet instead of the saucers under your pots. They raise the big pots on, you
Yeah.
just put them up so then water won't stand there. And another standing water site that we have in Tucson, and there some other parts of the country don't worry about, are our swamp coolers.
Yeah.
For folks, when you're running your cooler and the pump is running, that's not a problem. Standing water, the mosquitoes, they may lay eggs, but they're not going to hatch, they're going to drown, so that'll be fine. But if you go on vacation and you turn your cooler off and you leave the pan full,
Boy.
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes.
So we get a lot of questions about those swamp coolers. It wasn't really in the literature, and we had to sort of think about it for a while. And yes, that water
So
does
you
stand
wanna
there
keep
if
it,
you're
because
not
the moving water, it's the standing water
exactly,
that can be so bad.
exactly,
And
exactly.
we do want to give you quickly, we don't have much time. Again, we want to thank Patty McCormick and Lisa Hewlett for talking to us about West Nile virus from the Pima County Health Department. And please give them a call, 243-7999, and check out the website, pimahealth.org. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Any
you, Vicki.
indication that
Appreciate
this is going to be a bigger season than? Not yet. We're just kind of getting
it.
into
We're
it,
just
huh?
getting into
We're
the
just
season.
getting in.
Yeah.
There's
All right.
2 viral indicators, as I mentioned, in Arizona only so far. So it's a slow start for the year this year. Maybe that's a good thing.
That's a
That's
good
It's a good thing. So
Thought we were dry. We didn't have a wet winter, and we kind of did the year before
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
again, thank you all very much. Pima County Health Department. Best thing we can do to prevent West Nile virus is to learn about it. So, thank you. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, Vicki.
Very
This is
much.
great.
Yeah.